set the stage and let us know what we're going to be getting out of today's meeting?
Sure. So I'm sparing you all the visual behind me, which is my makeshift office in my basement, and my team is probably laughing because they know exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody wants to see how the laundry is done and my boiler system, but so now you just have my smiling, happy face from a place I'd love to be at right now, which is Post Office Square in Boston. So Belfort Group is an integrated marketing and communications agency in right downtown. We have been a lucky partner of the Middlesex 3 Coalition and have worked with Stephanie and Erin and her team for years now. And I see a lot of friendly faces on this call. Hello, Rick. Hello, others. We love this group because it brings people together regardless of being virtual or in person. And today, it's really about how do we move business forward. I mean, my team and I and my business partner, Phil Pinellatore, who's also on the phone, the first couple of weeks we were trying to figure out, how to do Zooms, how to do FaceTime calls, and how to literally do the work that we were supposed to be doing while the disruption was happening. We've gotten past that. Now it's about how do we use our collective networks to drive business forward, whether you are you work for a municipality or you're a developer, you're a professional services firm. How can we use the Middlesex 3 mind hive, if you will, to move business forward? And my team of Mike Sherry and Ariel Ferrante will speak about their particular areas for our agency, but their expertise and their ideas of how we can use, again, our expertise to move things forward. And despite the disruption that's happening in business and around the world, I think there is an opportunity for us to help each other out. And it might be just evaluating how you're allocating your marketing spend now that may be different in 6 months. Or it could be, how do you pitch stories to the media that is so focused on COVID-19, or what you should be doing for your website based on what's happening now to make sure it's optimized the right way. So the Belfort Group, we've learned a lot of things in the past month and a half about what we should be doing for our clients, and we want to share that expertise with you today. So I'll shut up and I'll pass it off to my team at the Belfort Group, but thank you all for being here today. And Stephanie, thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we'll hand it over to Mike.
It's Mike.
I'm now unmuted. All right, let's try that again. Thanks, everyone. Mike Sherry, nice to meet you all with the Belfort Group. I handle media relations, public affairs, all kinds of development projects at the firm, and just wanted to talk to you today about a couple trends I'm noticing, not only with our own clients, but around the industry as a result of the COVID-19 scandal. So if we can just jump over to the first slide for my section, if we could.
Can you see it, Mike?
There it is now. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
So just a cross section of the clients we've worked with. It's really a great selection of professional services firms, like a lot of the people on here today, public institutions, private institutions, developers, real estate firms. For everyone, there's a unique problem and usually a unique solution that tends to involve some combination of media relations, public affairs work, government relations, marketing, branding, social media expertise. Each solution is unique, but I think each problem is really custom tailored to the solution that it requires. So great selection of folks we've worked with, and happy to talk about examples of any of these, of our work with any of these folks, maybe at the end of the presentation or offline on a separate occasion.
Oops, sorry.
It's all good. Erin's controlling the slideshow. I appreciate it, Erin. Thank you. So I wanted to talk about an area of work that I focus on specifically, which is media and community relations, not only for professional services firms, but for developers seeking projects, for municipalities that are trying to attract and retain businesses to their area, and for everyone in between. So the first component of that is, of course, media relations and understanding how the coronavirus crisis has really changed the media landscape, at least for the short term. It's obviously the biggest driver of news right now, and that means that newsrooms have dedicated huge resources, which they don't have a lot of, to cover it. So understanding that coronavirus coverage is dividing the newsroom of whatever outlet you're trying to get media coverage for your business for is really important. You need to decide, when you want to pitch a story now to the media, are you trying to capture those reporters and editors who are covering coronavirus, or are you trying to get the half who still aren't? And that means you need to decide if you're going to adjust your media pitch to be coronavirus related, or if you're going to try to keep it unrelated, which is okay. You need to know who in that newsroom is still covering their old beat, is still covering non-coronavirus related coverage, so that you are able to tailor your news directly to them. So one example of this is an estate planning firm. It's a client of ours, Contreo. They've created an essential employee discount, which was a relatively small financial offering to anybody. Well, it's a large discount of the price, but of course, as a percentage of their total sales, it's still pretty small. To anybody who is deemed an essential employee, medical professionals, first responders, grocery workers, etc. We helped them put out a press release announcing that to a great effect. It got great coverage, far outside, frankly, what a release about a normal discount would have gotten. And it was relevant to what the media was writing about, which is how businesses are responding to the coronavirus crisis, what they're doing to make essential employees feel like they aren't alone in this crisis. And of course, it provided a new chance for Centreo to get in the news. So that's an example of tailoring your coverage to the coronavirus crisis. But if you wanted to still pitch your old news that is unrelated to coronavirus, if you can't find a connection to it, that's okay. You got to do the research and understand who at the paper or the TV station that you're targeting is still covering that old stuff. The Boston Globe, for example, has peeled off a lot of its cannabis and medical marijuana reporters to cover coronavirus. So if you're in that space, you may want to try a different angle for the short term. Eventually, the media is going to get back to probably more of a balance. It's skewed so heavily in favor of coronavirus right now. So if you really just can't make a connection to the COVID-19 crisis, don't feel as though you're stuck, because things will get back to a greater sense of equilibrium, but it will take a little bit of time. Can we go to the next slide? Next thing I wanted to talk about was community relations. And this really applies to, we use it most predominantly for developers who are trying to build community support for their projects. But I noticed some folks on the attendee list today, architects, construction firms, environmental engineering firms. All of these, what you might call sub-vendors of a development team, are still very important for the community relations process, and I think are an important component of how developers and development projects and any business that needs to deal with the community need to be thinking going forward. Physical community meetings of all stripes, not just civic meetings, but sports associations and ethnic associations, the Rotary Club, you name it, they're all on hold. And that means that many of the traditional avenues for dealing with the community are also on hold. But that doesn't mean you should, if you need to be dealing with the community, it doesn't mean you should be taking a break. It means you need to be thinking about other ways to reach the folks you need to reach. So a lot of these groups have had a renewed focus on their email listservs to communicate about what's going on in their neighborhood, to discuss group business. So getting access to and permission to post to those listservs is one really important way. Another method is the phone meetings that their boards are still conducting regularly. Ask if you can get on the agenda for their phone, for their meeting of the board by phone, and give a short little speech announcing yourself and what you're trying to do there. And of course, individual meetings can still take place by phone and by email and through other means. Community sentiment is still being expressed to cities and towns and other businesses, just not so much through in-person hearings, which are really on hold for the time being, but through letters, surveys, and social media. Surveys, especially if you still want to go forward with whatever method of community relations you're trying to do, surveys are going to be an important way to do it. They've always been important, but now we're seeing an increased focus on it. To give an example, a client of ours, the Davis Companies, which is preparing to launch a project in Alston, we were always planning to do a survey for them, but with community meeting on hold, essentially, we have now expanded that vastly to a whole series of surveys that we're going to be launching over the coming weeks, in which we ask take people's temperature on all things from public amenities to ground floor retail to transportation. So it's really just the same level of community involvement now needs to be dedicated to these digital and other impersonal ways of communicating with folks. And that applies whether you're a municipality trying to take the pulse of your business community, whether you're a developer trying to get the neighborhood to support your project, whether you're a business that really relies on a strong local customer base. All these are important for you, just in a slightly different way. Next slide, please. I noticed a bunch of folks in here today are from municipalities, and I just wanted to talk briefly about the new role that municipalities will play. We've in the past helped various towns and cities market themselves to businesses, market themselves to tourists. But now I think that the main focus, the main priority for a lot of them, especially with tourism off the table, has got to be retaining, protecting, and then growing afterwards your business community. And so we wanted to talk about, from the perspective of people who work both with municipalities and with the businesses that depend on them, some things that really would be helpful for them as they try to retain their business communities. The first is to, where possible, remove, delay, or postpone as many regulatory burdens as possible. Your businesses are really, as I'm sure you know, at the end of your rope, and complying with regulations, which really may not be, obviously have a role, but may not be super time sensitive right now, and being smart about prioritizing which ones can be pushed off is a good way to relieve some of the pressure on your business community. Another way is to appoint, and we're seeing some cities that have the resources do this, is to appoint individuals who are designated to be kind of the ambassador to a particular neighborhood of businesses, or to a sector, acting as a sounding board, as a resource, as someone that these businesses can talk to let them know what they're dealing with, and then that information gets passed further along the chain. Find in many cases, cities and towns have people who are doing less because their day jobs aren't relevant anymore, or are doing, frankly, are furloughed. And this is a great way to make use of those folks who otherwise don't have something to do. Have them be a point of contact for a small subsection of your business community, and then regularly check in with them to find out what they're hearing, what your business community is saying, what they need, and how you can help them. Another really important thing is that all businesses, we found, really rely on understanding, on predictability and understanding what the municipal regulatory schedule is going to be like. And with this throwing everything in the loop, really take extra time to keep the business community informed as to what's going to happen in terms of the town schedule. So you may not know everything yet, and that's fine, and you can say that. But what you do know, be very communicative with them. We're dealing with a lot of developers who say, we understand that, you know, the permitting for our project, for example, is going to be taking a back seat during this crisis. What we'd like to know is, right now, how often is the planning board expecting to meet in the coming months? Will it meet in the coming months? When do you see as a reasonable schedule for resuming activity? What are you doing for that purpose? And then communicating that to businesses just provides them with a layer of predictability and understanding of the municipality's role that they wouldn't otherwise have had. I think that's really important as businesses try to figure out their game plan for the next coming months. Even if the news is bad from the town, it's better to have bad news than no news. So just be communicative with what you're planning to do in terms of your licensing, with your permitting, with anything that relates to your business community, as they really depend on that knowledge. And then lastly, where you do have good relationships with folks in your business community who are benefiting maybe from your help and guidance during this period, keep cultivating those relationships. At the end of all this, every city and town is going to want to market itself as an economic development hub, as a place where it's good to do business. And when you have people who can vouch for your town as a place that really stepped up during this crisis, that's going to encourage other businesses to come to your municipality. You don't need to be blatantly transactional about it. Just keep those good relationships going. And when the time does come to ask someone to serve as a testimonial or an ambassador for what your town did during the crisis, you have those relationships. It's really important, because whatever a town says, that's one thing. But when other business leaders say that this town really stepped up, that's something that people deciding where to locate their business, that's something they really take into account. Biomed Realty is just a quick example of a client that we're working with that has maintained offline informal conversations with staff on the planning board and with members of the city council about what the permitting and rezoning process is going to look like in the next couple months. It's been very helpful to them, and it's not something that the city of Cambridge, that's where this is, would ordinarily do, but this is unusual times. And so by keeping them informed as to what the permitting and licensing schedule is going to look like, Biomed is able to better plan what they're going to do, which is really helpful, even though the city's still going to do what it was going to do anyway. It's just communicating that knowledge in a way that benefits everyone. Next slide, please. The last thing I wanted to talk about was whether you are a business planning to have your grand reopening, or a municipality looking to relaunch your economic development or your tourism campaign. Sooner or later, the crisis is going to end, and you should be thinking now about what that future reopening looks like. For some businesses, for some towns, it's going to be a huge release of pent-up demand. I'm thinking especially folks in the hospitality or the restaurant industry, where people have really been will be excited to get back to doing what they've always wanted to do, go down to the bar for a drink, for example. But for other folks, your customer base, you need to recognize that your customer base maybe struggling. You know, a lot of folks have lost their jobs. A lot of people are on unemployment. And so you need to be thinking about how your offerings can match, you know, a new profile of customer that frankly may not have as much economic resources. Maybe that means tailoring your offerings to be at a lower price point, a lower frequency of delivery of service, or smaller product, but extending your options so that price points are not as painful for some of your folks who are suffering is another approach to be taking. Regardless of what you do, now during the slowdown is when you have the time to dedicate to this. Sooner or later, they are going to announce that everyone is back open for business, and the medical professionals and municipal officials will be in agreement on that. And then everyone is going to be thinking about their marketing plan. Everyone is going to be thinking about how we announce ourselves. You want to be the one who is thinking about it now and who is planning your marketing strategy now, so that when that day comes, you are ready to go with a plan. And whether that is developing your big grand opening, whether that is a city or town trying to capture a huge influx of tourism that you lost during this crisis, or whether that's a developer trying to finally get your project back on track. This slow period, as frustrating as it is the time when you should be thinking about what you're gonna make that happen, because it will happen, and we want to be ready for it. That's everything I had to say. My colleague Ariel Ferrante is really great with branding, digital media, all kinds of marketing materials, and she's going to take over after me. But definitely, if you have any questions, there will be an opportunity at the end, I think, to ask, and I'd be happy to take them. Thanks so much for your time, everyone. Really appreciate it. And Ariel, I'll let you take it away.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel Ferrante. I'm the director and lead of the Creative and Digital Strategy practice area at Belfort Group. And I'm here to talk about navigating your digital marketing strategy during this current climate in terms of what to keep on your marketing checklist and what you should be thinking about and considering during this time. Next slide, please. The primary question is, how do we continue to drive business? That means don't put a halt to your marketing efforts, but instead reprioritize and reallocate resources accordingly. Identify your goals for today, because they may be different from what they were yesterday, and align your resources accordingly. Be agile and flexible as things change, and align marketing initiatives toward where the opportunities exist right now. Business process is going to be constantly changing every day, so you really need to be flexible in where you align your marketing resources. Continue to share content, promote you and your clients' success stories. Take the time to develop your content strategy. You don't have to be silent during this time, but instead share meaningful content. And right now, we have more of a captive audience than we've ever had before, so you need to use this to your advantage. There's no opportunity to rely on more traditional methods anymore. We don't have the option to attend events, meet people face to face, but that doesn't mean we can't still have meaningful conversations and connections. At the same time, many of us are working from home and on our devices, so it's more important now than ever before to be active where your prospective and current clients are currently active, and to optimize those channels. And here I will be sharing with you just some recommendations on how you can take advantage and adapt. Next slide, please. The first step is to evaluate your digital brand presence. Now, what does that mean? It means reviewing what digital channels you have at your disposal that you can leverage for communication and content delivery, whether that be your social media business profiles, your business website blog, or your email marketing platform. Within your communications within these channels, it's important to stay relevant in your overall tone and messaging of your content across all channels. However, you need to remember to add to the conversation appropriately. For example, avoid talking about any sensitive topics. Shift your messaging from promoting in-person events or activities to online formats. As an agency, we're focusing our marketing on promoting our clients and promoting open communication. This is the time people are looking to make connections, so show you're available and that you're there for your current and potential clients. You also need to review any advertising efforts you may have running and evaluate where you can shift your resources and budget. For example, if you're running a paid marketing campaigns on Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Ads, programmatic advertising, or other, you need to manage your budget effectively. And that means shifting campaigns towards channels where you drive the lowest cost per click or cost per conversion. It also means you may have to pause any non-essential advertising or efforts that are not going to deliver you the direct impact you need right now. Instead, you need to focus on channels and efforts that directly drive business leads. Next slide, please. You can use the digital channels that you have at your disposal to keep your business moving. Use your organic channels to offer your advice, your counsel, and your perspective to position your company as a thought leader in your respective space while constantly reminding your audience how to connect with you. Post on social media and your website about how you see your business industry is shifting. Offer your expertise on a specific subject and then share it with your network. It's important to keep communication open. Stay active on your social media channels and post current updates on your website. Stay active with your internal and external network. Plus, you can activate marketing channels and lead generation-based advertising on platforms like Google Ads, Facebook, LinkedIn, and others, depending on where your audience targets are. But focus your efforts to where you can make the most impact efficiently. Next slide, please. You also need to create compelling digital content. With communications being even more consolidated to digital channels, you need to stand out from the virtual crowd with the content that you share. One way you can do this is to prioritize your creative. Post social media updates with interesting visuals, infographics, or graphics to promote your business and your virtual events. Take the time to work on your own case studies and visuals that go along with them for your website. For example, we're actually working with a local sports club who can't put on events right now. So we're taking the time to completely relaunch their website, gather photography, rework brand messaging, and focus on their brand content so they have a showcase piece to completely transform their business funnel for when we're back up and running. You also need to develop digital-first creative content assets and rethink your promotion strategy for any virtual activities and events. For example, we're working with a higher education client of ours to launch a virtual Accepted Students Day that we turned into a virtual Accepted Students week-long event. And to do this, we're leveraging new creative ideas like branded camera filters and virtual activities each day, like a scavenger hunt on their website, just to get prospective students and parents engaged and involved. And lastly, leverage and create these digital assets just using what you have access to right now to create things like brand videos and graphics, interactive brochures instead of print brochures, and new website content. You'll always have the experts and the assets of the experts within your own company, so tap them for content. Write a blog post, video yourself talking about a topic related to your business. Keep creating content that speaks to your brand, your knowledge, and your expertise. Next slide, please. And next, think about optimizing your website. Take the time to redesign or update your website page layouts to optimize for mobile and additional devices. Make sure your website is responsive, that you can easily navigate your content on different devices. Additionally, optimize your website for both SEO and the user experience. Evaluate your page structure and your website content. And one way you can do this, for example, is by researching what topics people are going to be searching about right now related to your business and writing content for your website that helps to answer those questions. And dive into Google Analytics to identify top performing content on your website and evaluate how people are navigating through your content. You can also increase website traffic among new and existing audiences through things like Google Ads campaigns. You can leverage prospecting campaigns, competitor targeting, and retargeting to solidify your search presence. And lastly, evaluate your digital lead funnel. On your website, this means optimizing your contact form and the backend database integrations on your website for contact management. It's important that your website communicates your expertise quickly and allows people to easily contact you. You should also evaluate how your website captures and stores contact information. Lead notifications should be directed to someone at your company who's responsible for personal follow-up, and their information stored in a database or CRM platform that connects to your website automatically. Next slide, please. And finally, within these marketing activations, you need to be sure to build an integrated strategy. Think about your current business pipeline process and what it looks like from when a lead initially interacts with your brand all the way down to conversion. What content do they see? How do you convert them? You need to determine if there are other channels you could be creating or revamping to optimize your digital lead flow and your brand presence. And of course, make sure that both your messaging and the visuals you're putting out there are cohesive and consistent. An integrated marketing strategy will really best position your brand for success now and in the future. And of course, let me know, and I would be happy to connect with you all one-on-one and talk specifically about your marketing challenges after the webinar. And thank you.